Welcome to the Office Latte Podcast, where we go beyond the boardroom to explore new conversations on life and career. I'm Erin Kennedy, CEO of Professional Resume Services, and wife, mother, sister, daughter, aunt, and friend. Now, let's dive in. Hello, Sam.
Hello, how are you doing?
Fabulous. It's sunny today. You know, I always talk about my weather, but it's sunny today. Super windy. In fact, we lost power on Monday.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, we had huge windstorms and crazy storms on Sunday night. And we were like, yeah, we made it through. Okay, yeah, because, you know, we're in an area, it's like super high wind. We're like in a, you know, rural area. And Monday, you know, I'm sitting at my desk, I'm diving in, and then by 7:30, all the power went out. It started, no, actually, it browned out, even scarier. Because, you know, yeah, so we were out of power all day. And today we have a lot of wind, so I'm just crossing my fingers that in the middle of this podcast, we don't suddenly lose power.
You'll just leave.
Yeah.
That's hilarious. Yeah, no, my lights were flickering the other day. We were having like wind advisory as well. It was nuts. Yeah. As you said talking about the weather, I was going to be like our weather report with Erin and Summer before we get into the show.
California. Yeah. Ever not been sunny there?
Yes. It gets very foggy it gets like cloudy and foggy is the way we get like rain in Michigan. Same thing. Yeah, they get foggy. I know. I'm like, oh, bummer. Like, the sun's not glaring in my eyes.
I gotta just tell you, yesterday, we haven't seen a day like this. It was like dark. You know how it would get dark,
I love that.
and rainy all day, and it downpoured.
Oh.
It just downpoured like torrential downpours. There was so much flooding in our area, but it was crazy till like this morning. It literally was like 24 hours.
Yeah.
That's why I said I'm gonna go out and move with the summer.
To cool every farmer, we needed that.
I know. I will say this morning when I looked outside, I'm like, wow, the grass is like bright green, you know.
Yeah, that's nice.
Anyways, so I am excited about our guest today because it's a topic that I know you and I have talked about.
Oh yeah.
And it's important, and it's very, very common, and it's about burnout. So I'm excited to talk to our guest today because she is a burnout coach. In fact, her name, not her name, but her thing is badass burnout coach.
Love. That's like the energy you need when you need to get a burnout coach.
Right? I know. And I love her take on it. Her name is Tara Kermiet.
Love.
And so I'll read her bio. She's a sustainable leadership coach and a burnout strategist and consultant, helping leaders and workplaces survive the burnout era. My gosh, with everything going on right now, I mean, so with over 15 years of experience in leadership development, she brings a strengths-based, human-centered lens to her work.
Love.
She's the creator of the Burnout-Resistant Leadership Ecosystem, a comprehensive framework that empowers high-achieving professionals and value-driven organizations to build burnout-resistant careers, teams, and cultures. Her work, I thought this was really cool, blends neuroscience, design thinking, and strengths-based leadership strategies to help leaders maintain their edge without losing themselves in the process.
I love that.
She also has her own podcast called the Balanced Badass Podcast.
I need to listen.
Yeah, a space for candid conversations about burnout, boundaries, and bold leadership. So, I found her and I was like, oh my gosh. And so then we connected on LinkedIn and I started following her and I asked her if she'd be on our show. So
I love that.
Yeah.
I'm excited. I'm excited to hear about her approach because it also sounds like she does some like prevention work for leaders, which is so important because like a lot of people wait till they're fully burnt out to even like start Googling burnout and like what they should do about it. So I'm curious of what she'll say about that.
Yeah. And you know, it is so common. I mean, I've been doing this since 1999. I've been writing resumes since 1999.
I love that.
And there are days when I'm like, I cannot put two words together right now. I don't want to have to look for another synonym for the word deliver. I don't want to have to, you know what I mean? It's
executed.
Like, I know. Thank God I have lists. I do. And I
Yeah.
put them on LinkedIn too. I have lists of sitting in this room. But some days I just am like, I cannot do this anymore. I need a break. And I will say, I mean, I haven't had major burnout, so I'm looking
I was gonna
forward to
ask.
getting
Yeah.
some stories from her. But I have had moments where I'm like, okay, I need to step away from this for a day or two.
Yeah.
How about you?
Oh, I've definitely experienced burnout, but I was gonna say yeah, because I was curious if you have ever felt like you've experienced burnout. But I feel like for some people, as someone who like gets burned out easily, other people it's very easy for them not to get burned out because like they're not even realizing they're doing things to ease their like life. And I feel like you take a lot of breaks from your work or go on vacation or like you're good at having boundaries. I think like in terms
Yeah.
of your work and being like, okay, I can step away for a second and
Mhm.
the world won't crash kind of thing. Yeah, I mean, I think for myself, I definitely have, I think, a tendency to overwork myself or like myself too, or
Done too
give too
much.
much to of myself
Done too
to
much. Yeah.
work. Yeah. And just, yeah, I just do too much. And,
Mhm.
I've been learning like how to scale that back and find that balance because like especially when you're passionate or you love what you do or
Yeah.
you're really excited about a team project, it's hard not to want to like jump in and do it all
Right.
and or like do yeah, whatever it is. So I've been learning to be like, okay, like we don't need to finish this entire project today. We can,
Yeah.
or early, that too. Like there's
Yeah.
timelines for a reason, use them. You don't have to finish projects early. If
Take a break. Yeah.
yeah, take a break.
I'm a huge advocate of mini breaks too. I mean, I don't
Yeah.
take vacations. I was going to correct you right away. I need to get better at that. I really do.
You don't, but I feel like, I don't
No,
know, like not
yeah,
mentally, I just feel
when
like
the right time.
yeah, you
Do
know how
that.
at least in the summertime to be
Right.
like, I'm truly stepping away. Like I feel like when you step away, you can actually like
And
step
I
into
do,
it.
I take Fridays off and I do
Yeah, like things like that.
breaks, um, but I know that there are so many people that don't do this and it builds up
Yeah.
and it builds up and it builds up until they just explode and, whatever. So that's
Yeah.
what we're talking about with her. I want to hear
I'm
her tip.
excited. You too.
Um, what she recommends for her clients.
All right, well, let's jump in.
And meet Tara. Good morning. Hello, Tara.
Hi, friend. How are you?
I am so good. I'm so glad you were here. Summer and I were just talking about you before we started, and how we both could have used someone like you at different points in our lives. Oh,
Yes.
you are. I love your title, the Badass Burnout Coach. That's what initially drew me to you. So I was like, yeah,
Love it.
you are my people. Yeah, yeah. I get
Yes.
that. So, all right. So let's talk about this. Okay. So your LinkedIn profile mentions that you are a burnout survivor. So let's talk about how you got into this and how is your personal experience kind of being a burnout survivor shaped your approach to coaching others? I mean, how did this get started? How did you end up doing this?
Yeah. So you mentioning like Summer could have used me, like
Yeah.
that's exactly why I do what I'm doing, because I really could have used someone like me when I was in the middle of the mess, as I like to say. So I have a higher ed background. So I worked in higher education, and similar to the education field as a whole, you work a lot and you don't get the same kind of recognition and
Right.
reciprocity
I was
back.
going to say, no pay. I mean,
No,
that's
yeah,
good.
no pay, no fun. You work all the time. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I was working way overtime because obviously, like, I worked with students. So, like, you have to do when activities and things when students are available, which means not 9 to 5 typically, but
Right.
you still have to work 9 to 5.
Yeah.
So I got very used to and trained at a very early age in my career that you just put in the work and you don't get the results back. And
Well, that's no fun.
no fun. And it wore me down.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I burned out several times in my higher ed career. And I probably skipped over a lot of that, like just as many people do, like powered through, figured it out,
Yeah. Yeah.
went to a new job and recycled the same issues over and over again. And I would say that my burnout started way even before my career. Like it started in school because I was a high achiever. I had to be in every club. I had to do well in every club. I had to get the straight A's, I mean, very common experience for many of us. And then I moved into the corporate sector. I left higher ed back in 2021. And I like to say I went across the street from higher education. So I went into the corporate setting, but I was still in the education field. I was still doing my leadership development work, and went to a company that I really thought was perfect on paper, I would say. They had espoused values that aligned with me. They said they were a people first culture. And, I came from higher ed. I joined this new company and we had happy hours where they paid for our drinks. We had, we got to go on trips. We had all hands staff meetings in fun places where they took us to Disney and crap. I mean, on the broad scale, it was great until it wasn't.
What happened?
So we went through a layoff. The company went through a pretty extreme layoff. We had been told leading up to that financially we were doing okay. Yeah. And then bam, all of a sudden we were not. It was literally, I remember it was a Tuesday, and we started seeing people drop off the Slack. So I worked remotely. So we started seeing people drop off the Slack. So it was like the equivalent of people packing up their boxes and leaving, but they were just fading out of the Slack. And come to find out, my team, I was on an education team. I was doing instructional design at the time, and my team had been pretty much gutted. We went from, we didn't have a huge team, but we went from 7 to 2.
Yeah.
And that included our director, our manager. No one told me. No one from HR ever reached out. I only knew because I was close with my manager, so she told me.
And you were still there. So you were
still there. I survived.
To 2 people.
Jeez. And we were expected to still produce the same amount of work.
I was going to say, right. Did you have to pick up the slack of everybody else?
Yes. Had to pick up the slack. I didn't know. We were very niched in our roles, and I didn't know how to do the other stuff, but I was trying to figure it out. No one ever reached out from HR. I didn't hear from my new manager for a month and a half. Just floundering.
That's nuts.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So then what?
Yeah. So after that, I ended up I started having meetings with they ended up getting rid of the CEO. They hired or promoted some new people. And I ended up having more and more meetings with the co-presidents, specifically one president. And he was a bully. And I'm not a psychologist by any means, but I would say narcissistic tendencies. Mm-hmm. But anyways, he was a huge trigger for me because of past experiences I had in higher education with bad managers, like you were kind of talking about earlier when I popped on with Summer. But it was to the point where he was so triggering for me that I was getting physically ill before meetings with him. He was gaslighting me so bad in meetings that other people were starting to contact me to see if I was okay after the meetings. And I couldn't say anything to anybody.
Yeah.
So
right. So what happened?
So I ended up, it was my husband, he was working from home one day and saw how bad I was reacting to these meetings. He knew I was stressed, but he saw it firsthand with me, getting physically sick, crying, all of this stuff. And he was like, you can't keep doing this. And so I ended up leaving without having anything to fall back on, which ended up being a huge blessing to me because it gave me the kind of gumption I needed. I had been thinking about starting my own business. And so it really got me to where I am now. And
push. So,
I needed it. And I study leadership. That's what I do. Yeah. And that company was very much an example of what not to do for leadership. But it was what I needed to figure out kind of where I wanted my work to focus. And so now I really do focus on building badass leaders without burning out, and really focusing on sustainable leadership is what I do.
Oh my gosh. I love that. I love that your story is what led you to do this. Summer and I were
Yeah.
saying the same thing, chatting before you hopped on about how what she was doing in her terrible work environment led her to do what she does now, which is what she loves.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we do need that push. Not that you want to go through that crap, but
No.
I mean, I was in a toxic work environment like that too with a terrible company, but it eventually, same thing, like led me to quit and find a, anyways. But it's funny how that happened. So I'm glad that it led you to this because
Mm-hmm.
boy, you are what so many people need. So, okay, for someone who's really burned out, they're just done. They can't take it anymore. They don't know where to begin. I mean, what are the first steps that you would recommend?
Yeah. So the first thing that I usually do when I'm talking with folks is we've got to get you back to kind of recalibration with your nervous system. So I do caution that a lot of what we see on social media right now is self-care and take your vacation and do all of these things to fix the symptoms of burnout, which yes, I do agree that that's where you start. That's not where you actually recover from burnout.
Yeah.
But if you don't have that baseline, if you're not back to foundation, then you can't focus on the bigger issues and the root causes. So that's usually where my work starts with folks is let's figure out kind of physically, mentally, emotionally where you're sitting with your nervous system and what are some small habits we can tweak here and there, even if it's just giving you more water throughout the day or, walking and getting some movement in. Just micro recovery is what I kind of talk about there.
Sorry, I was just gonna jump
No,
in.
you're good.
I'm reading this book, and I had never even the concept of resetting your nervous system. Anyways, in this book, this guy talks about when you've been through these traumatic events, which it could be a consistently awful workplace.
Sure.
I mean, really, that is trauma, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And he was talking about, but for him, it was a whole different thing. But talking about resetting your nervous system, and it had never occurred to me because your body holds that in there, holds that trauma in there. So, or in burnout. So besides water, what other things do you recommend to reset that nervous system?
One thing is when I talk about rest, I really try to get people to think about what type of rest do you need. We can't just say like, oh, you need some sleep. I mean, sleep is important.
Yeah.
But you may need creative rest. You may be in a work environment that does not allow you to be creative, but that is something that's important to you that you may need to take some time to paint during the weekend.
Okay. Yeah.
How
do you figure out what you need?
Yeah.
How do you figure that out? That's the thing.
It's hard. It's a reflective piece. And this is where I jump over to, because sometimes these things don't happen. They're not steps. I call them steps, but they're not steps, right?
Yeah.
They happen all at the same time. But I work with folks to analyze and figure out where their burnout is coming from, because it's not just working too hard. There are individual factors at play that contribute to burnout, but then there also are systemic, like workplace related issues.
Yeah.
I have 5 C's that's how I kind of drill it down.
Yeah, I don't want to give you that in a minute too.
Which we'll get into that, but figuring that out is important because that helps you figure out what kind of rest you might need as well, because you see the misalignment. Same with values. A lot of burnout comes from misalignment between your values and the organizational values. So I always try to encourage folks to think about what are values that are important to you as like you as a human, like how I show up as Tara every day. Like if I wore a t-shirt every day, what would my values on my t-shirt say? That is core to who you are. Those are your anchor values. But then there's also professional values to how you show up to work and how you want to lead and like things that are important to you. Like for me, my professional values, I need a collaborative environment. I need a fun workplace. I need a place that trusts me to do the work, that has
Yeah.
like autonomy.
Yeah.
And if I'm in a organization that does not have those values, then there's obviously going to be tension. So that also helps me figure out where my rest or recalibration may need to focus. It's also like literally looking at your energy and how your energy is being spent. And, you know, I think ChatGPT is a huge help when it comes to this kind of stuff. I
Yeah.
actually rely on it a lot for like, hey, not for counseling or anything like that, but like, hey, I know I'm missing out on this creativity piece, if we stick
Right.
with the creativity piece.
Right.
Or I also know when I'm starting to feel stressed, I take myself away from my friends and family, and I just like isolate and at home, but I
Yeah.
actually need some social engagement and support. And so I will ask ChatGPT, like, what are some ways that I can incorporate this? I have 10 minutes tomorrow. Like, what should I consider?
Yeah.
And that helps to just start the process. I always say many little experiments and see what sticks and see what doesn't, because that's all data for you.
Interesting. Wow. So yeah, so that's okay. So there's a couple different things here that I wanted to
Mhm.
talk about. So there you have your 5 C's, but you also have your burnout resistant leadership. So let's talk about your 5 C's.
Yeah. My 5 C's are, I would say, like the foundation of everything that I do,
Mhm.
because that's how you figure out where your burnout, like I said, is coming from. I call it the 5 C's driving burnout.
Yeah.
And it's starts with conditions and culture. So you look at the work conditions. This could be your physical setup of your space. It could be the workload. It could be the personalities that are involved. If there's conflict, it could be how you work with your team, your colleagues, could be communication, all those like logistical things that I like to think about when it comes to work.
Okay.
Digging into like what's stressful to you. Where is there friction for
Yeah.
you there?
Yeah.
Then culture is obviously like you're looking at toxicity.
Yeah.
Is there, you know, an expectation that you're constantly on? Are boundaries just completely just erased
Right.
in the
Right. Right.
workplace?
Yeah.
You know, do you have any kind of pressure, any kind of, you know, bullying or anything like that? Like the culture plays a role. So you got conditions and culture. Then I look at individually, we're going to look at capacity and choices. So capacity, that is your actual like ability to do your work. Like where are you energy wise? And this includes not just your physical energy and capacity, but your mental capacity, because having that mental load makes a difference. Your emotional capacity as well. So this could also be like a context of what's going on personally, professionally, that may be influencing how you're showing up at work. So that's really what capacity is about, is
Yeah.
where are you showing up? How are you showing up? And then choices, we don't always love to talk about this, I think, because it's looking in a mirror and having to be really honest with ourselves. But like,
Right.
are there
Right.
choices that we are making that are influencing our burnout?
Yeah.
Because as much as it's a systems issue, there are still individual factors at play. So if you're a people pleaser, if you're a perfectionist, if you don't hold to your boundaries, you know, if you're checking your email all the time, like those are all going to be factors that play a role in what you're doing. Like when I was in my career, like I chose to work over having a social life many, many times. And that then led to burnout. So we have to look at the choices that we're making.
Yeah.
And then lastly are the convictions. So the convictions are those internal beliefs that you have about work and worth.
Okay.
So these are the drivers. These are where your values kind of come into play. And what is important to you? Do you see hyperproductivity as valuable? Have you grown up being rewarded for being a high producer? Have you, like, I grew up as an only child. So
Oh,
I
all the
have
pressure
just,
was on you.
yes. And
Ooh, yeah.
I carry that. Like that is part of my conviction that I have to work through.
Yeah.
And that influences my choices, which then influences my capacity. So you can kind of see how all of these interplay and really play a role in what's driving your burnout. But the important thing is figuring out where are the main drivers, because that's how we start to address them. And there's ways to, take back some control in all
Yeah.
of those areas. And then you also have to figure out, like, if you can't make a change, is it time to stay or go? Like that's a
Yeah.
conversation that I have with a lot of folks too.
Wow. So once your clients have figured out their 5 C's, what do you do with that? How does that help them?
Mm-hmm. So the next step is, now that you know, because you can't address what you don't know and what you're not aware of. So now that you know, the next thing is to think about, where do you have some agency and control over making some shifts that you could see if they work or not. I take a design thinking approach with this work,
So
which
what is
means
that? I read that earlier in your bio. What is a design thinking?
so design thinking comes from product development. So it is a process where you come up with ideas, you brainstorm, then you come up with kind of like your minimum viable product, if you will, or prototype. Then you test those prototypes, you get some feedback, and you reiterate and make small tweaks here and there to then figure out what like the final product's going to be.
Okay.
So I take a same approach with kind of my coaching and with even just my own life. There's actually a book out there too, and I can't remember the author. It's like Anne LeCompte or something. I'm going to butcher her name, but it's called Tiny Experiments. It just came out. It's super great. Very similar concept, where I am not asking people to change everything all at one time, because that's also going to be too overwhelming. They're not in that space to do that. So we think of prototypes that you can test out and see what's going to work. If it makes a change for you incrementally, then you know you can build off of that. So how I do this is I start a conversation, or when I'm doing this in my own life, thinking about the center core of what I can change is always me. I have the most control over what I can do.
Yeah.
So I look at my 5 C's. What's driving my burnout? What can I change myself that could influence in a positive direction that C? Then I expand and go to my support network. So who in my support network can help me with that as well? Are there people that I need to hold me accountable?
Would that be colleagues? Would that be your spouse? I mean, who would be?
Yeah, it can be anybody. It can be colleagues, spouse, friends. It could be someone that you reach out to. Maybe, like for me, I see a therapist. So like oftentimes I work with my therapist on these kind of things too. Could be a coach. It could be a mentor. I actually have a whole nother area where I talk about like the support squad and the people that you need on your support squad, but that's like a whole nother conversation. But you've got to look at that, because you also need to look at who may be contributing to those C's and who may not be.
Yeah. Okay.
Because
a lot of times those people in our support system are also the ones that are creating and causing some of this.
Yes.
Okay.
And that is important to recognize and acknowledge where they're serving you and where they may not be serving you.
Yeah.
Then we start looking at your work. So this means like your role and your responsibility. So there's a practice called job crafting that you can really tweak your job depending on how much autonomy you have. I always say, like, you got to look at the like viability of being able to make some changes and tweaks. And also just the openness of your leadership to be able to do that. There's some conversation there. But there should be something that you can tweak, even if it's like how your calendar looks, or you know, how you actually do the job from day to day, what your to-do list looks like, having some management. So figuring out where you have control there, and then also where you need to advocate at your workplace for some changes. If there are more cultural conditioned things within the company or the organization, obviously you can't change those alone.
Right. Right.
But you have some agency to be able to speak up and talk with your manager about it, or another trusted support within your workplace, if that exists. If that doesn't exist, then psychological safety is where we have a conversation, and maybe this is time to go. And then the last thing I always try to think about in conversation with this is what's going on in the world around us, like your context of everything.
Yeah, that's true.
Because that's also important to recognize, like environmental,
right,
financial, political, you know, everything, even down to like family life and what's going on within your family. Like my dad passed away in 2018, and you know, work was not as important to me as my family at that point in my life, obviously. And so even though I was burnt out at work, I was not in a place to be able to address some of the issues because of the context that I was in. So it was also a matter of like kind of disassociating to a certain extent for a short amount of time to figure out, like, let's get me through the initial grief, and then we can kind of address what I need to address.
Yeah. Okay. So you've said before that recovery starts with awareness and reclaiming agency. Can you explain what the agency activation method is and how it helps people feel more in control again?
Yeah. So what I just walked you through is actually the agency activation method.
Okay.
But the good thing about that is that the problem with burnout is that it takes away the control, and it festers and loves to live on that notion that we've lost control over everything. And so the reason why I use that as part of my coaching methodology and communication is because there's always something within you that you can gain a little bit of control back. And that helps snowball into the other things. And once again, it comes back to that prototyping, really figuring out the small incremental changes that you can make to feel like you're getting some agency and control back in a situation where you have lost it for probably a long amount of time.
So your burnout-resistant leadership ecosystem, is that something similar to this?
Yeah. So what I'm using that for is
I love all your names.
I know it's a lot. It's a lot.
I like them.
It's like the umbrella of everything that I focus on, but it is a 3-phased kind of approach. Assess, which we talked about already, figuring out where you have agency, figuring out what your 5 C's are. Then we align. So this is like recalibrating, getting things back into play, doing some prototyping and testing, also doing values alignment here. And that helps you, you know, with the work that you do with like job search and all that, that helps you figure out like, where do you want to target your attention? And redesigning your work is part of that process. And then, then you just redesign not just your work, but your life as well. Because I also think a huge part of what's missing when we talk about burnout is cultivating your non-work passions as much as you're focused on your work. Because we lose part of our identity, I think, when we're in burnout. And that's the easiest thing to go, is the personal life stuff. But that's what you need most often, usually.
Wow. So tell me about, as the host of the Balanced Badass podcast,
love it.
What inspired you to start this platform, and what key messages are you hoping to convey? I mean, your episodes are great. You know, they have great names and they focus on different things. So what are you aiming to convey?
Yeah. Well, I started it. It's really honestly just a fun project for me because I was a communication major and I wanted to be on the radio. I wanted to be a radio DJ, or I wanted to be a weather girl.
So what happened with those? Those are both great dreams.
Yeah. I they weren't sustainable careers in my mind for what I wanted to do. They were fun,
Yeah.
but I didn't feel like I was making much of a difference.
Okay.
And so that's how I ended up in higher ed. I fell into higher ed. So, it is what it is. But I'm glad I did because I learned my passion for leadership. But yeah, I wanted to start a podcast because I missed that part of that was like my creative juices.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
And retouching back with that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I ended up, and a lot of people had told me, they're like, you need to start a podcast because I love talking about stuff and I have a lot of thoughts on things, and that's a great platform to share said thoughts. And so I built it to almost be a guide for people who want to be balanced badasses.
Yeah.
So I cover topics that we talk obviously a lot about burnout, but I also cover topics on just how to lead and how to live a balanced life. Most of my topics come to me from conversations I'm having with folks that slide into my messages on social media. Honestly, that's like what spurs my conversations. Like this week's episode was all about like your work persona and how you show up, because I had a conversation with a friend of mine actually about how she was realizing she was using her professional voice a lot more at work because she felt like she needed to.
Yeah.
And I was like, I should talk about that because that can really burn you out. That can really have an impact.
Right. Using that all day long. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that's my intent. Honestly, I'm just doing it as a platform to help share some helpful tips, but I also bring in guests to provide a different perspective, also to talk about things that people may be asking me about that I don't have the expertise in, that I really want to bring that person in.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like I had a guest a couple weeks ago talk about hypnotherapy. That is not an area that I have any idea about.
Oh, okay. So what was that about? I mean, tell me about that.
Yeah, it was really cool because she really talked about how we, from a young age, like from when we're in the womb, are essentially like hypnotized and ingrained based on just subconscious things that happen in our environment. So she talked a lot about the subconscious and how that can influence the decisions we make, the environments we put ourselves in, and then how hypnotherapy can help you come to realization with those and determine if they're serving you or not.
Did she hypnotherapy you right then?
She did not hypnotherapy me, but I do have interest in working with her because I was not familiar with hypnotherapy. Like all I know is like hypnotists at like, Vegas or whatever, she really opened my eyes to that. I also had someone come on and talk about yoga and how yoga can help, which really for me was good about like the recalibrating, getting your nervous system back. I am not a yoga girly, so that was really good for me to have someone else.
I'm not either, but boy, you never hear anything but positive things about yoga.
I know, and I really need to get into it. It's just I don't.
I know, me either. Wow. Yeah, we'll have to talk more about that. I was going to do hypnobirthing with my children.
Oh, wow.
I will say that did not work out. That was with my first, my oldest.
I didn't even know hypnobirthing was a thing.
I'll just tell you this. I was going to breathe the baby out. So my sisters and my mom were all like, okay,
Sure.
Exactly. They're like, okay, there you go. And that did not work. 48 hours of labor, finally a C-section, the emergency, the doctor's like,
oh my gosh.
Anyways, but I am still a big fan of, I've never had it done, but I think hypnotherapy can be amazing. So yeah, that would be interesting to interview a hypnotherapist. Okay. So tell me about your Career Pivot Playbook.
Oh yeah. So I recently, this came from a lot of conversations where people were coming to me and they're like, I don't know if I need to stay or I need to go. And
Yeah.
how do I even, you're so overwhelmed at that point that how do you even start to make that decision?
Yep.
And I was in that phase, right? I
Yeah.
definitely
Had the
felt it.
experience. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I started thinking through like, what did I do when I was trying to figure out if this was a viable situation for me to stay in, or did I need to like drop it all together, and what did I need to do? So I started putting these things together, put a playbook together. It walks people through a little bit more surface level, obviously, because we can't get too deep in a playbook with everything that you would get through coaching, but it is a reflective exercise. What I like to say is like part ebook, part actual workbook, because it does have some kind of educational components to it. Like I break down the science of career crafting. I break down my 5 C's. I talk about what burnout actually is as defined by the research. And then walk people through exercises to get them to think about what are their values, what do they like about their job, because you may be in the most miserable situation ever. There's still going to be threads that you can see where you like that may help you determine what your next steps are.
Right. You're going to stay or go.
Yeah. And so basically I like walk them through kind of like a career pivot decision process and give them resources and questions to consider. And it's something that's accessible to everybody, because another thing that I have very much respect for and I'm very cognizant of is people in this situation that I was in.
Yeah.
One, not everybody has the privilege to be able to leave.
Right.
I definitely, because I had the support of my husband, like thankfully could, but I am very cognizant of the financial pressure that exists. And when you're in that situation, so I wanted to make something that was easily accessible to everybody. So it was like $20, and it is 100 pages of support and resources that they can get, and something that they can revisit. Another thing that I wanted is to make sure that it's something that they could kind of keep in their tool belt whenever they needed it.
Yeah. So what would you tell someone who's dealing with burnout right now and trying to figure out their next steps? I mean, of course, call you.
Yeah, that would be my first, like, hello.
Hey, this is what you do. Yeah.
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 Yeah. I think the first,
somebody who's listening and just nodding their head and going, yes, this is me. This is me. Yeah. What do I do?
Someone who is listening right now is, I would first encourage you to get real with yourself about your situation. That is the hardest step to overcome, because you can hear things and you can be like, that's me. I feel that. But until you say, I am burnt out.
Yeah.
That is literally the first step that you need to do. And then you start adding on to that statement. I am burnt out because, and you start looking at the 5 C's and what's causing the burnout, because that is going to guide you on where you need to go. Now, obviously I said like you need to restore kind of your baseline well-being. So that's another piece to, and that's usually honestly the easier, it's not easy. I should say the simpler thing to do, because that's usually when we realize we're burnt out, is when we start losing sleep, getting migraines, getting sick.
Yeah.
So that's simpler to address because it's tangible. It's a tangible symptom. The 5 C's are harder to get into because they're not always tangible or as obvious to us.
Yeah.
So that's usually where I kind of guide people. But obviously I tell them, call me, because we'll walk through this together.
Okay. So we're at that point. How do people get in touch with you?
Yeah. So I am on social media. I am on Instagram. I am everywhere. I'm on Instagram, Threads, TikTok.
Is it Badass Business Coach?
Well, it's at Tara Kermiet is all of them, just my name. And then I'm very active on LinkedIn as well. So I do a lot of posting on LinkedIn. So if you want to follow me, connect with me, I love that.
Yeah, your posts are great. Follow and connect.
Thank you.
because your posts are super valuable and helpful. Yeah.
Love it. And yeah, and then I'm at tarakermiet.com for more information on just my services and all that kind of stuff too.
And that's Kermiet.
Yes.
There's that I in there. Yeah.
There is. When I'm feeling fancy, it's Tara Kermiet, but
wow. Okay. That is very fancy.
you know.
So, okay. We have our last question for our guests. What's one thing that you're passionate about or that you do, or maybe a hobby or whatever, one thing that people don't know about you?
Yeah. Well, I I am a plant mom.
Okay.
So a lot of people know that I'm a
I do see plants, yeah.
A lot of people know that I'm a dog mom. I mention this a lot. My fun fact usually is that we have 5 dogs because not a lot of people have.
What breeds? Tell me all.
Oh, we have a variety pack. We have 2 Shih Tzus. We have a Lab, a German Short-haired Pointer, and a Australian Shepherd Labradoodle mix.
My goodness. Okay.
So we're like the Brady Bunch. Like my husband had 2, I had 2, and then we were like, let's get another one.
And which one was that?
That was Winston, the Australian Shepherd Labradoodle.
Okay. Aw,
He's
Winston.
Yeah, and
they're in the office with you right now. Any dogs? Or no?
Yes. I don't know where she is. Lane's here somewhere. She's, I think, laying down there.
Oh, I see.
Chips.
Yeah, sweet.
Yeah, because they're all. But I also collect plants and have an obsession with plants. But I'm not actually really good at keeping them alive.
I was gonna say, what is the secret? Because
I don't know. I don't have it.
I have tons, and they're all fake.
Oh, well, I also enjoy the fake ones too. But yeah, I'm really trying hard. And then another thing too is I've just gotten into sourdough.
Oh my!
I know I'm like way late.
That's a podcast right there. That is a giant undertaking. It really
I
is.
actually joke when I like say that because I'm like, oh, and I recently got into sourdough. So clearly I like to feed things on a schedule, including my husband, because I'll lump him in there. But yeah, I do like it. I'm about to have knee surgery, so I'm not looking forward to.
And that's next week.
A couple weeks.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was. Is it on the?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh,
but yeah, so I'm not looking forward to having to like try to keep up with that and my body. But
that is a big thing.
It's a commitment.
Bread maker, like homemade from scratch, but sourdough is its own thing. Like,
it's a commitment for sure.
It is, and it's just a lot.
Yeah,
but I love it. I mean, it's delicious. Who doesn't love it?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it's great with everything.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Well, it was just such a pleasure to have you on our show, and I'm so glad that you agreed. And I hope people that if you're in a situation like this right now, don't hesitate. Reach out to Tara.
Tara, yes, I'll bring the fancy me.
Reach out to her, and I mean, don't struggle and don't go through this alone. I mean, when there's someone there that can support you, find them. And here she is, right. So thank you again, Tara. It was just a pleasure.
Thanks again for listening to the Office Latte Podcast. You can find us anywhere you listen to your podcast. You can follow the podcast on Instagram and TikTok at Executive Resumes, or subscribe to our YouTube channel, Office Latte Podcast. If you have any career questions or conversations you want us to talk about, send them to officelattepodcast@gmail.com, and we'll answer them in an upcoming show. Have a great week and stay caffeinated.